Well, what an extraordinary day in Australian political history. The Liberal and National Party coalition splitting for the first time in nearly 40 years, and only the third time since they came together in 1949. Now, those two other breaks in the coalition were in 72 after Gough Whitlam beat Billy McMahon. They came back together before the 74 election. And for 4 months in 1987 over the Joe for Canberra campaign. Now, in some ways, this could be good, but obviously in the short term, it weakened Conservative politics in this country. You have the crazy situation of the Albanese government holding 94 seats and the Liberal opposition, now the official opposition, holding just 28. Even though the Liberals and Nationals will still largely work in tandem, without a formal coalition, you have a huge government and a tiny opposition. It deprives the official opposition, of course, of experienced talent in the Nationals, and it means Susan Lee, will have to construct her shadow ministry entirely from the Liberal Party room, which is diminished. Now, some of the details around how and why this happened are quite sensational. Nationals leader David Littleproud gave Susan Lee half an hour's notice that he was going to kill the coalition agreement. The major reason for that split was that the Nats wanted a guarantee on policy positions. The Australian reported today that the 4 policy demands confirmed by Nationals MPs, senators and key officials at a meeting last Friday focused on nuclear energy, forced divestiture of supermarkets, the recently announced $20 billion regional future fund and enforced universal service obligations ensuring reliable mobile phone coverage in the regions. The problem with that is that Lee has been explicit in not yet committing to a policy agenda.
The Nationals sought specific commitments on certain policies, and they've talked about that this morning. And our perspective is not about the individual policies themselves, but the approach that we said we would take to our party room about policies. Nothing adopted and nothing abandoned. So at this point in time, I ask the Nationals to respect those party room processes.
Lee proposed to Littleproud that they form a shadow cabinet of both Liberal and National members, as is the standard for the coalition. Then both parties should go away and sort out their respective policy positions and come back to discuss. Now, I can understand why the Nationals might be uncomfortable with that, because even though the Liberals and Nationals are allowed a conscience vote, members of the shadow cabinet are duty-bound to support the coalition's policy and leadership. And if you don't yet have a cohesive policy plan, it's difficult to understand what you're signing up for. So the Nationals requested that any of their shadow cabinet members be given a free vote, which would allow them to oppose net zero, for instance, even if the Liberals stayed with the policy. But that kind of situation simply isn't tenable. You can't have different members of cabinet singing from separate hymn books, otherwise there isn't much point in cabinet. So to some degree, they've both been as unreasonable as each other, and it will, in the short term at least, be a free kick to the government. Now, both Lee and Littleproud were clear today that they are open to reforming the coalition, and Littleproud more or less said he wants to. He described it as a breakup to have some time apart.
What this is about taking a deep breath, to be able to say to the Australian people that this is a time apart for us to be better. To focus on them. Now, we have a clear focus on the people we know we want to represent, and I want to allow Susan the time for her leadership to shine, to be able to give her the opportunity to go and be able to demonstrate that, but to design that and be able to come back together. This is a healthy part of our democracy that I think we should be proud of.
He even said Lee could be the next Prime Minister.
The commitment both Susan and I made is that we will work together to give her the space. You've got to understand, Susan has been given an unenviable position to actually try and restore. I have faith in her. I actually think it is conceivable that she can win the next election.
But the reality is she can't be Prime Minister without the Nationals. I mean, the Liberals aren't going to win another 50 seats in their own right, and in the modern world, they probably never will. So here's why I think this could, and it's a qualified could, be a good thing in the long term. The Liberals and the Nationals need each other. If the Libs want to have a Liberal Prime Minister again, they'll need a coalition with the Nats. And if the Nationals want to exert rural and regional influence over national policy, they need to join with someone who could help form government. And at the moment, it's only the Liberal Party to choose from. So really, they'll have to come back together as they have before. On other occasions, twice they've done this. But this is a shot across the bow, a message from the Nationals to say to the Liberals that they need to have a serious reckoning as a party, and in that assessment they are correct. As the LNP's Garth Hamilton wrote in The Australian yesterday, the best thing about Peter Dutton was that he brought peace and stability to our party. The worst thing about Peter Dutton was that he brought peace and stability to our party. We needed to rid ourselves of some of that baggage. We needed to have a few internal policy fights to test our resolve. Thomas Jefferson believed every generation needs a new revolution, and I believe the new generation of Liberals needs that too. By having a break in their relationship, having time apart to be better, as Littleproud put it today, and let's be honest, many of us have done that in our romantic relationships and friendships before, the Nationals are trying to force those fights, particularly when it comes to net zero, and their aim in that regard is noble. The Nats haven't lost a lower house seat at an election since 2007, so you can't argue that they don't have a blueprint for success. They also managed to turn Bendigo marginal, which has been held by Labor since 1998, with a 9.7% swing. The Nationals believe in something, they're clear about it, and electorally, it's worked for them in rural and regional parts of Australia. Now, the last Liberal leader to deal with a coalition breakup, of course, was John Howard during his first shot at Prime Minister. He said this today.
I don't compare today's situation with 1987, although that was pretty painful. I am very sorry that this has happened, and I urge both parties to work overtime to put the coalition back together again, because all the history of Australia suggests that the glory days of the Liberal Party and the National Party, the Old Country Party, are when they are working together in government. My experience as a Liberal leader and as a coalition Prime Minister is that if you have a strong coalition and plenty of trust, you can resolve any policy difference.
And he's right, they do strengthen each other. They bring different perspectives from different parts of the country. And of course, the broad church that John Howard always talked about served the party well. I'll repeat what I said on Thursday night. The Liberals need the Nationals now more than ever. Drop net zero, keep nuclear, and build a genuine alternative for government.